I moved home that year, and then I did $1 million that year. And for everyone hearing that, if it sounds crazy, it's because all I did is I sat in that room. I would go weeks without seeing my dad, and I lived in the same house. You can read books and listen to podcasts all day long, but there's nothing that really beats experience. It's slow. It's a slow teacher, but it's the most effective because you remember. I hit $1 million a month, and I thought I would feel different, and I didn't. So you build this thing up in your head of what it's gonna feel like, and then you get there, and it's like, oh, okay, like my life hasn't changed at all. Like I still have problems.
One thing that I've been learning from successful entrepreneurs is that business doesn't have to be that complicated. Some of the best businesses out there are built off some basic fundamentals: problem and solution. That's pretty much it. Now, my next guest is Tanner Chidester, and he's responsible for creating multiple online businesses to pass 7 figures. And up until recently, he was running his company called Elite CEOs. I got to ask him about how he made his first $1 million online and what it was like, really, the mindset that it took to be able to get there. We also got to chat about some of the realness behind entrepreneurship, and that sometimes when you hit your goals, there's some emptiness that can come from it. One of the other things I was really interested to talk to him about was about his recent conversations with ultra millionaires and billionaires, where he was picking their brain as to how they got started and how they were able to exit at such large numbers. This was a really eye-opening conversation, and I appreciate Tanner for taking the time and sharing this. And without further ado, let's get into it. This is the Entrepreneur Unplugged. Where did it all start for you? Like in terms of getting online and starting in the internet business, I suppose.
So I grew up in a family of 7 kids. I got 6 siblings, and my dad was a teacher, and then I had a stay-at-home mom. So right out of the gate, I don't want to say I had a bad upbringing, but just stuff was very limited, just say that. And I was the oldest boy, so I was a little bit of a oddball because I had 2 older sisters. And if you go and look at my childhood, I'm in all these dresses and I'm doing tea parties. And so I think my dad was fine with it because he's like, hey, he's playing with his sisters. But as I got into, middle school and junior high, obviously the guys that, gave me a super hard time. And I was a little bit, I don't know if it was strange. I just had like a big heart, I guess. And I didn't understand why people would be mean to others. And I got bullied a lot as a kid. So around 12, this was actually pivotal for me. And I'm actually curious if we were to look at the statistics of millionaires, how many would consider they were bullied? Because I think it actually helped me a lot in hindsight. So around 12, I'm in 6th grade. I'm getting kind of over it. And I remember going to my parents. I said, hey, I want to start going to the gym before school so I can, get in shape. But really, I wanted to just beat these kids' asses like bad. And I started going to the gym before school. My mom would drop me off. I'd work out for about 2.5 hours. She'd pick me up, and then I'd go to PE, which was my first period. And so after about 3 months of that consistently, I started putting on some size and muscles. I was puberty, newbie gains, etc. And people stopped messing with me. And I was like, oh, this is kind of nice. I put in work, I get a result, people don't mess with me. And then I started really excelling at sports, partially because I think, I'm somewhat naturally gifted, but the other part is obviously I'm working out and none of these other kids are. So I immediately stood out on the football field. And I took that pretty seriously until about 22. That was my entire life. I look at the college landscape now where these athletes are getting paid crazy amounts of money. And it's probably even more competitive than it was when I played. But that was my whole goal. I wanted to play in the NFL, want to be, a professional athlete. I got all the way to the Division I level, which is basically, right below the NFL. It's about as high as you can go. And I got hurt a lot. I don't think I was good enough. And then that's when sports ended. So at that point, this is the first time I'm having to start thinking about, what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And I had a mentor who I had lunch with, and, he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, man, I'm really struggling. I'm kind of lost my way. I had this identity for the last 10 years. Now I'm here. I don't know where to go. And he just asked me point blank, he said, what do you want? And I just remember looking at him and saying, I just want to make a shitload of money. And it was just because the way we were raised, it wasn't bad, but I just remember my parents would argue about bills and groceries, and I had to pay for college if I was going to go or get a scholarship, which I did, and cars were limited, or I'd have to drive my mom's van. It just wasn't extravagant. And I remember telling my mom I was going to be rich so I could get meal prep, or I was going to be rich so I could get more protein shakes, because I couldn't get those as a kid because it was just
Yeah.
expensive. So he convinces me to drop out of school. I have a year left. And this will actually be helpful for people listening. And a lot of people question that decision, including myself, but I dropped out because he said, if you start that job, you will never quit and you'll never start your business. Because as you get
Wow.
older, you're going to have a girlfriend or a wife. And as soon as she sees you're making 100K, she's not going to want to go back to zero. And I remember that being very impressionable. And so I dropped out of school and burned my boats and went all in. So 2 years go by, not making any money,
Yeah.
really struggling, but I'm learning all these skills. And at the time, I just thought it was a bunch of baloney and wasting my time. But, I was learning how to build funnels, learning how to run Facebook ads, learning how to set up, Stripe and Zapier and all these things that you don't even understand go into building a company. So I'm 25-ish now. I really started, that journey like 23-ish. And I haven't made any money, and I'm just, I'm feeling down. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling just kind of hopeless, like a loser. And that I've spent all this time and I haven't done anything, and it hasn't been worth it.
Yeah.
So I'm considering going back to school. And I remember right when I'm considering this, I call my mentor. He's like, hey, dude, like, just keep going. You're going to figure it out. You have what it takes. Just keep going. I'm like, okay. So I see an ad on Facebook, and it just said how to start an online fitness company. And till that point, I didn't even really use social media. I don't even think social media got big till I was almost out of high school. So
Yeah.
I graduated in 2010 in high school. And I think 2008 was when stuff really kind of started picking up. So I just remember that ad stood out. I clicked on it, got pressured into a high ticket sale, had no idea what high ticket sales were, what the guy was doing. But, he pulled if you don't pay today, you can't come back tomorrow. And so I paid everything I had. I had about $2,000 to my name. Wasn't much.
Yeah.
And I paid $3,000 on a credit card. I actually had to go apply because I didn't even have a credit card. And then I went back and I finished the payment, and I went in the program, and I don't think it was anything insane, but I just said, I watched like 2 videos. I said, guys, like, I don't want to waste my time with this mindset stuff, because it was just
Yeah.
building. I'm like, guys, like, I don't need this. Like, just tell me what I need to know. And they said, just raise your prices and message people, get them on a call. I was like, okay, because till that point, I'd only been selling a $47 program with a link. So I started reaching out to my followers. I made $10,000 in a week. I was like, oh shit.
Wow.
Called my parents and said, hey, let me move home. I'll pay you guys like $1,000 of rent. I'm going to work on my business. I moved home that year, and then I did $1 million that year. Tons of trainers started
This
asking
is
me
your
for
first
help.
year? Pretty much your first year.
Yeah, but,
Is that right? Wow.
and for everyone hearing that, if it sounds crazy, it's because it was. Because all I did is I sat in that room. I would go weeks without seeing my dad, and I lived in the same house. I mean, I go weeks.
Yeah.
And
Did
I
you
did
say
$1
you were
million.
obsessed at that point?
Oh yeah.
At what point did you feel like, wow, something's happening here? Was that really early on, and then you kind of just stuck
I'd
with
say a couple months in. So I was doing everything organically, but I was burning out because I was working 16 hours a day. I was messaging. I started getting arthritis in the knuckles of my fingers.
Shit.
And the doctor's like, what are you doing all day? And I was like, I talk to people. He's like, if you don't slow that down, you're going to get arthritis at a young age.
Yeah.
And I was paying all these coaches to figure out ads, and I wasn't having a lot of success. So to your question you just asked, what happened was ManyChat came out. I don't know if you remember that. But that was about 5 years ago. I was one of the early adopters. And I got really frustrated one day because I was making all this money, but then I'd pay a coach $10,000 and $15,000 and $20,000, and I'd spend money on ads. And so all the money I was making was just getting taken out. My dad was like, what are you doing? He's like, if you just held on to the money you're making, you'd be rich. He's like, stop paying all these people. I said, Dad, I have to, because I can't keep doing this forever. So I just kind of felt like it was a ticking time bomb, so to speak. Yeah. And then I got frustrated one day, and I went in and I said, F this. I'm going to message every single one of these people. And I did, and I made $18,000 that day. I was like, oh shit. Yeah. And then that was that pivotal moment, and then everything just started freaking snowballing. And a year after that, I had a waiting list of like 20, 30 trainers wanting to work with me. And I said, guys, like, I don't really do this coaching stuff. I kind of hate coaches. They're kind of douchey. They're scammy. Like, I don't like them. Like blah, 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 all this stuff, which is ironic. But I finally had a list so big I think it was, around 150, $200,000 of customers. And I was like, man, I'm 25, like I'm scaling, like I
Yeah.
want to do this. So I did it. That then things really blew up. We did 10 million that year. And then the next year I had more people ask outside the fitness industry. And that's how Elite COs came
At least,
about.
yeah.
And now it's been about 5 years and it's been pretty crazy, but that's kind of the trajectory of how everything
Wow.
happened. I didn't know anything about business or even think about business till I was almost 23.
I was gonna say when you first, had that initial year, that first few months that you got a lot of traction. What was the offer back then? Like, were you even thinking about that, or it was just like get customers and then I'll figure it out? What was the thought there?
Yeah. Well, so it was just a fitness offer. It was just how to lose weight, get in shape.
Wow.
And I had, at the time, I was still modeling. So, like, I was fitness modeling. So, if you ever type my name in on Google, you'll see some funny pictures where I was like doing underwear modeling and stuff like that. But I was shredded. And so, I took one of my pictures where I was probably 5% body fat. Like, it was painful. It was
Yeah.
like, I remember taking those pictures and I was extremely shredded. You could see like all my obliques, everything. Anyways, I took that and I ran that with my ad, and my headline was just how to eat whatever you want without sabotaging results. And so the comments and the gate, people are like, hey, that's not possible, or how is it? What is it? Da, 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 all this stuff, and
Yeah.
that just went crazy. And that's how I built up my first company. And I think if anyone's listening who's thinking about that, that was part of why I wanted to do that as well, because I saw these business coaches, and I'd say, cool, like what business have you built? And they're like, oh, well, like this one. And I'm like, well, dude, like that doesn't
Yeah.
count,
That doesn't count.
at least for me. And so part of it was when I got my first like 2 Comedy Club award from ClickFunnels. I remember that it felt very pivotal because people were like, oh, you're the fitness guy, like you're the online fitness guy. And so it just gave me this credibility I don't think I ever would have had if I just gone straight into business coaching. And
Yeah.
it's just I guess it's an afterthought point, but I think that's part of what has really helped me because I can always go back to that as, well, I actually built,
You built the
7-figure
business.
business, so I can
Sure.
show you how to do it too. And that seems to be like really big for most people, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, because I know in the coaching space, there's quite a lot of offers where the offer is what it is, right? There's nothing else to back it, and I know that, and I say that with respect to a lot of people building businesses, but for yourself, you had a different business to what you're selling now that came off the back of that. Is that right? And how long did that
Yes.
take till you pivoted into that or added that as part of your offer?
Yeah, so it was about a year, and then what happened was initially, I was like every other young kid, and I said, "Oh, I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna do both." I have one team, and we're doing two offers, and their attention is split. And then I think we did $1 million in just 3 months of my business coaching with trainers. It was just going
Yeah,
insane, and it was at that point I said, "Well, look, like we can't do both. I'm getting spread way too thin," and that's when I switched. And I think in hindsight, that may have not been the right decision. Like I probably could have kept going with fitness and made that bigger and bigger. But at the time you're going, okay, I'm doing about 150,000 a month with this one. This one's already doing about 300 to 400 like out of the gate.
yeah,
And so I just pivoted, and then that's when we started shutting this side down and we switched. So I think it was good from the viewpoint, excuse me, of you don't want to do two things at once. It's so hard when you have your team doing two things in a day. They're just basically
yeah.
halftime here, halftime there. But that was the reason I did it. I was just all about speed, and I was like, I'm trying to hit these numbers as fast as I
Trying to
can,
get the
and that's
numbers
kind of
fast.
why it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it seems like you're pushing for something. At what point did you actually hire people though to get to, well, either to get to the mill or to sort of transition? Did you hire early and do that, or
I
did you do
really
most of
didn't
it
hire
yourself?
much. So the first person I hired was my brother, and he did a little setting and he did coaching. And then once he was full-time coach, because I had about 30, 40, 50 clients, I was like, hey man, I can't keep spending time with these clients. Like you take all of them. Then I brought on probably 2 messengers or setters, right?
Yeah,
That was it. And I was taking all the sales calls. I was running the ads. I was doing the back end. And that's all I really had in the beginning when I started. So for me, I don't really think you need too many people until you're probably 300 plus. Then you start hiring like maybe more operational people, COOs and CMOs and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I ran the whole back end. So I only
Yeah.
had three team members up to 100 something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. And I think, with some people, some businesses, there's a couple of things. One is they want to hire really early to get themselves out of doing things that they don't want to do. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily go down. And some people will hire way too late where they've burnt out and, they have no energy for the rest of the team. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, this stuff makes me laugh all the time and I feel bad for laughing, but someone comes to me and says, hey man, like I'll partner with you 50-50. I'm like, awesome. How much revenue are you doing? I'm doing 0. Like, so what's the benefit for me? You want me to run your whole company and you bring what to the table?
Yeah.
Nothing, right? Like you don't know ops, you don't know sales, you don't know marketing. Like you don't have any revenue. I think most people hire too early because they don't really want to build a business. Like building a business is hard. In fact, I look back now at what I've built. It's crazy. Like it took me 3-4 years to build a really high quality team because you got to hire, you're going to lose people, you got to see what's a good fit, what's a bad fit. You can read books and listen to podcasts all day long, but there's nothing that really beats experience. It's slow. It's a slow teacher, but it's the most effective because you remember.
Yeah.
So I think most people hire too early. The people who hire too late, I don't even know if they hired too late. And I think they burn out because they suck at leadership. They suck at the things that make you a good leader. So you can get to 100K a month pretty much just sheer will and determination. You want to get higher than that, you have to learn how to build a good team because you don't have any more time. And so you have to have people you can count on that are going to do different tasks in the company. I'll tell you from the clients I work with, the biggest issue they have is they don't know that they're a bad leader. So they'll bring people on and they give them these ridiculous wages that obviously they're not going to stick to, or they'll pay someone $2,500 and they want them to be a full-time sales rep. Or they'll just ask for ridiculous things. I say, guys, there's a balance. Like there's what's best for the business, there's what's best for people. And if you really want to keep people happy long term, there's got to be, in my experience, it's in the middle. Yeah. Right? If you do too much over here, they're going to leave because you're an a-hole. If you're too much over here and you're like too nice, you don't get anything done in the company and they're just kind of abusing you. So it's that dichotomy of leadership. There's a book, Jocko Willink wrote it, and that's what he means. And that made more sense to me because people typically will say, I'm too mean. That's like, I've never heard someone say I'm too nice. They'll be like, if they don't like someone, they'll say, oh, Tanner, you're mean. But I think I'm like that because I'd rather be too mean than too nice. And obviously I'd like to be as close to the middle as possible, but you got to get people to respect your authority and get things done while also being their friend. And it's very hard, and most people don't understand how to do that. So it's like talking to your girlfriend. Like, how do you get your girlfriend or your wife to do what you want without pissing her off? It's a very delicate balance, right? Because if you push too hard, she's going to be like crying all night and emotional, and like the date night's ruined. If you don't push enough, you're not going to get what you want. And that to me is, it's not people hire too late. They don't understand how to do it. Last thing, sorry, I know a little of a tangent, but they also don't understand that when you hire, you're paying someone and you're also doing their job. So I used to hire someone, I'm like, all right, I'm going to show them what to do, 2 days. All right, do it. Don't ever bother me again. And I just thought that's how it worked. Come to realize, I mean, you got to spend 2 months, 3 months with some of these people, and they're getting paid, and you're doing the job for them, and you still have to do everything else. That's why building a team is so freaking hard, and that's why most people can't do it, because you're working twice as hard now, because you got to get this guy up to speed and do your job, and you got to make sure they're okay, and even when you're done doing that, you got to manage them. So I think what most people need to do is sprint. Once they start really hiring, you got to sprint as fast as you can to find a really high quality manager, because that's the only time you're going to start feeling relief, is when you have someone you can count on that will do the hiring, the training, the daily management for that division. But until then, you are the manager. And so your job is twice as hard. So I think that's why most people fail, because they can't get over that hump where they get that first manager.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that. That's kind of what, a lot of our clients, they get stuck with. That's kind of the solution that we offer. just on that, on leadership, because it does get thrown around, quite a bit, and most of the leadership, things out there on the internet is garbage. I've seen a lot of work with poor leaders, good leaders.
Yeah.
For you leading a team, where do you get either inspiration, learning? Like, where do you get mentorship to learn how to become a leader? Is it something that you watch and follow, or something that you can find somewhere, I guess, and pick up?
Yeah, I mean, there's like we were discussing. I mean, there's books and podcasts and stuff like that, but I think it's just learning how to get people to respond. And so I've done all types of leadership. I've done, very aggressive, almost brutal, like do what you have to do or I don't give an F. You can go somewhere else. I've done the other way probably where I was like too nice, where I started letting too many things go. I think I learned a lot from door-to-door sales and like phone sales in general because I just spent a lot of time talking to people and picking up on their mannerisms and what they say. I can even pick up on if someone's not a good communicator now,
Yeah.
So I think for me, what I used to do is I would bring on pretty much anyone who was the lowest price, and then I try to get them to mold to what I wanted. But now I really screen hard on the front end for the company values I'm looking for, so that I don't have to do as much work on the back end, because you're not going to make someone who doesn't value work as much as you value work. They're just not going to value it. Like, they either do or they don't. You're not going to get someone who just is collecting a paycheck to suddenly give you A+ effort. So for us, I didn't learn this till years down the road. What you want to do is just make sure on the front end, whatever values you care about. For us, it's like competitive greatness, proactivity, communication, and doing the little things right. Ultimately, I want someone who is like a go-getter. They talk well, they bring stuff up. It drives me nuts when someone on my team doesn't tell me something. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me? I mean, they just slows everything down. So now, if someone doesn't fit the company values, I don't care how skilled they are. I just don't even bring them on, because all they do at the end of the day is they become a weak link.
Yeah.
They slow everything down. And they don't last. Like, all the people you have question marks about, you're like they're okay. Like, they'll do. When you get to the level I'm at, it's not good enough anymore, because you'll only grow up to your lowest constraint, and those people usually are the constraint.
Yeah.
Like, we just had a guy who left, and he should have left. He got a job like $15,000 a month. We were paying him like $5,000. And he was going to be a marketing director. For us, he was just a funnel builder. But I go in after he's left, just kind of looking around and like doing stuff. And there's just like all these things that weren't done. And part of it could have been the pay. Part of it could have been the leadership, right? I always try to look at what I could have done better. But when you think about it, I'm going, like, this guy was asking us for a raise, right? Or wanted a raise. And I go in and like stuff wasn't done. The second the clock hit 5 o'clock, he always would be off. Couldn't get a hold of him. It's just like, it's a value thing. Like, and that to me is like where people could do better, is like try to hire for values. If they have experience on top of that, those are your A players typically, but I would hire for values over experience if you have to choose. And then, it's easier to make those people get to where you want versus trying to make someone become someone they're not ever going to be.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good point about values, though, because, a lot of people say, I'm trying to find the right fit. And what does the right fit mean? And I think that's a good summary of it. If they have the same values, or at least they understand, I think that's a really good starting point.
And you don't have to feel bad. Like, if you're the owner and you want people who work 10 hours a day and they don't want to work 10 hours a day, you don't have to make them feel bad. Or you don't have to be an a-hole. It's just like, like, you're not a fit here. Like, I want people who want that. And you have to be willing to put your foot down, because people get, they need a hire. They're feeling pressure. They're like, oh, like, we got to get someone in. I can't handle any more clients, or whatever it is. And I'm telling you, it's always the wrong decision when you rush a hire, right? Because they come in, and if they don't fit the values, you're going to end up letting them go. So all the time and energy you put into that person was wasted, and you should have waited longer. Anyway, so I get a little heated. It's like, that's my life now. Like, all I do now is team build. I don't really work inside the businesses anymore.
For sure. Yeah, I've seen you transition, from, well, I know you stepped down not that long ago from CEO. But I also know that you've been speaking to a lot of high-level people like ultra millionaires, billionaires, those sort of things. What point did you then transition to, speaking to these people? Was there an intention to get some knowledge from these guys to then implement? Like, what was the main thought process and outcomes that you wanted to get out of that? Because it's super valuable. All this stuff is like.
Yeah, so there's kind of three pivotal things I've seen that kind of helped me. So first one is, when I was going through a rough time, Alex Hormozi reached out to me and we've become pretty good friends. I like to think we are. I don't know what Alex would say, but I say he's a good friend. He just gave me a lot of advice, and I saw, I
Give
was
us some
watching
context,
him.
Tanner. Sorry, I know you.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a good point that you bring up.
Sure.
About the struggle, because you did post something again on your feed that like I think a lot of people go through but don't talk about. What made him reach out in the first place? What happened there?
Yeah, so it's ironic. He didn't know what I was going through, but my goal when I started my company was I wanted to hit $1 million a month. And the reason I had that goal was I saw Billie Jean, and he was, I don't know, he's at some freaking house in San Diego, and he's like talking about, yeah, like a janitor only makes this much and a doctor makes this much, and why? And it's like, that's, he's like selling whatever. This was years ago. And I just was like, you know what? If that guy can do it, I can do it too. Not in a cocky way or demeaning way, just I've always been like, man, if he can do it, like I can do it. And I always believed everything I saw. It's so weird to me to see all this negativity these days. I just never like related to that.
Yeah.
But anyways, I hit $1 million a month, and I thought I would feel different, and I didn't. And it was a little bit saddening because you build this thing up in your head of what it's going to feel like, and then you get there and it's like, oh,
yeah, anticlimactic.
Okay, like my life hasn't changed at all. Like I still have problems. Like I still have things to do. People don't care. It's almost like you're like, oh, I'm gonna get 10 million a month, and then you tell someone, and they're like, oh, cool, dude, yeah, awesome. And you're like, wait, like I just like spent the last like 5 years of my life, like, wait, like you gotta give me more credit than that. But people don't care, bro. No one cares, and that was like really hard for me to see. So I was going through this phase of just, what's the meaning of life? Why am I here? Does it even matter? Why do I need to keep running this business? Why am I running a business anymore if I don't need to? It's just a lot of deep questions.
Yeah.
And he reached out to me and just was giving me a ton of insight on what he was going through after gym launch. And he went through something similar, and like what he did with acquisition. And so, back to your question, I can go deeper on that if you'd like as well.
Yeah, go for it, man. Whatever you want to share.
Back to your question in terms of like, what made me transition and start having those calls is I saw Alex, we spoke a lot. I saw Alex Becker kind of transition. And then I started having these conversations with these high level individuals. And the biggest thing they did is they're just in different vehicles. I would even bet that I work harder than most of them in terms of just hours or output. But I started realizing, I said, hey, like if I want to get to this next level, no matter how good Elite CEOs becomes, no matter how amazing it is, no matter like how much coaching we do or how much ads or whatever, it's only going to grow to this constraint because the type of business model it is. And I just saw that over and over and over and over again. And when I started having those calls, it just clicked. And I was like, this is why I need to step out. And that's when I started.
When you say it's just the business model, it's the vehicle. Just before you go into to the next part, like where did you see your business model kind of constraining you for the next level?
Yeah, I think with internet marketing or like online type information companies, which is what I'd consider mine, is the problem is information. This is so unvaluable the second it's consumed. So I don't even know if you've ever had this happen, but I've had so many clients now that you'll have someone who's like week 1, they're like, oh my gosh, you changed my life. This is amazing. Month 5, they're like, oh, I would have probably figured this out on my own. It's like, dude, you would definitely not have figured this out on your own. But, more power to you, whatever. And so the problem is it's just so hard to keep these clients on for years and years and years. Right? Like if you keep a client, I would say 2 or 3 years in the internet marketing space, that's like really damn good. That's really good. Yeah. Especially if you're selling a 16, 20, 30K mastermind, right? So the difference is all these other offers, it's either, it's like some type of physical product, or it's tech where it's on this recurring, right? Like Uber Eats or whatever, like just something like that where they're going to constantly use it. Or it just has higher leverage clients, right? So clients are paying $500,000 a year instead of $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of things. So I think the constraint in not only my company, but most, is just the level of fulfillment is very high, and everyone's coming in at different levels. So there's really only two ways to combat that. Either you raise the standard of the clients you get to, like, hey, the minimum threshold is here, which could be like multiple 6 figures or 7 figures, or you change the vehicle where this level of service is easier to keep at the same level. And so, for example, Alex Becker switched from internet marketing to Hyros. Why is Hyros so profitable? Because it's a tracking software and it does the same thing for every person, every day of the week. Like, it works the same amount. It's never going to stop working. It's just very simple. Alex went the other direction, right? Where you see Alex, like, he's going after $3 to $10 million companies. So he's raising the level, but he's doing the same service. But it's easier to scale with a guy like me than it is to scale with, Jill down the road.
Yeah.
And then I saw, another example would be a guy named Scott Cohen. He went against Invisalign, and he just was like, okay, their cost per acquisition is 2,000. I'm going to lower mine to 400. And he's just better at marketing than they were. And he sold, his company was called Byte, BYTE, for $1 billion in 2 years.
Read that.
So I'm just sitting here going, like, what am I doing? And it's not in a bad way, but it's just the amount of work I have to put into elite CEOs now for this much more reward it's a lot. So I can put in this much more effort, but I only get this much more reward. Versus these other individuals are putting in this much effort, but they're getting this much reward, and it's just the vehicle. And so hopefully I explained that okay, but that's like the biggest thing I saw.
Yeah, and when you started, getting into the minds of these people, how different is their way of thinking, once they've got, okay, this is, well, either at the offer stage or the fulfillment stage, or, I mean, like, I know, just for some context here, all the people that you speak with, they are good at internet marketing, right? That's most of them. The guys who've had the $1 billion exits bootstrapped, they're all internet marketing backgrounds, which is ironic. It's very ironic. Yeah. So with that, being strong in place, and I think everybody needs to learn, even if they're not implementing their own internet marketing strategies, they still need to learn or comprehend how that works. So then, how do they come up with their offers? Like, how do they go against the grain? What did you find there the most?
It's a great question. So ironically, most of them, it's kind of frustrating a little bit, because most of them would just say, oh yeah, so this was going on in my life. I saw that was a problem, and then I just came up with a solution. So sometimes it's not even that they're searching for this business. It's just they see an issue and they fix it. Some of their advice was just, hey, go to your customers, look at the problems they have, and then see what you can streamline, right? One guy, for example, he sold weed maps for like 1.6 billion. And it was essentially a Reddit for weed. And he's like, yeah, I just like smoking weed and, chilling with my friends. And so I just did this. I'm like, okay. There's no more thought than that. But the thing that they all do is they look at, how do I get fulfillment as close to zero as possible? Right. And it goes back to Warren Buffett. He's like, how can you take something and sell it for $1 that costs a penny? The problem with education and information, at least the way I do it, right? I can't speak for everyone, but it's either A, if you drop the cost of fulfillment too much, it's a shitty service, right? So to me, like, I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but I'm just speaking for me personally. Like, if you're just doing 100% group coaching, I don't like that, because I don't feel we can actually fulfill on the clients. But on the other hand, if you're doing all one-to-one, well, what happens? Your cost of fulfillment goes way up. People are still saying, oh, I learned this last week. I need something new, fresh, and sexy, even though they don't, right? Like, they need the same stuff, but they tell themselves they don't. So it's hard to keep them around. But, for example, like Invisalign, and the guy did Byte. It's braces, right? Clear braces. Weed maps. Everyone's going to keep smoking weed. There was one that was called, Chief. And they did 100 million in 2 years, because it's a community for women who've been in the workforce for 15 years and are VPs or higher. So, and it's just a community. There's zero. So picture what we do, but it's literally just a community to talk. There's zero fulfillment. Just a lot of examples I saw where the biggest thing you have to think about, or what I'm going to be thinking about before my next thing, is I want like no fulfillment. I want as easy fulfillment as possible, or tech, right? Once the tech's set up, that's it. Yeah. So stuff like that is what I would see over and over again.
That's massive. I think that's a really good insight. Again, like in the thinking of some of these people, and it goes back to, there's a problem, they come up with a solution, and that's kind of how it.
Yeah, and I wish it was more complex, but they're like, yeah, like I have this problem, and like I keep seeing it too, and so I'm hoping that with my time off, they told me to take time off. They said that stuff should come, and they said and I think that's why they've said that, because if you're just sitting around trying to look for stuff, they're like, that's not how it comes. Like you might be like walking or reading a book, or you'll see something, and then you're like, oh, and like an idea comes, and that's why they all told me to take a year off from work, travel and stuff.
Yeah, okay, just to get out of the being in the forest.
Out of the weeds.
Understand. Just a question on that. I know I see this a lot in the comments of your billionaire millionaire chats. How did you get in touch with these people? Like, did you think about, okay, I'm going to reach out to this dude, or do you know what I mean? This guy's doing $1 billion and exited. Like, how did that come about?
So there's kind of three ways. So the first is like obviously someone who knows someone. So that's number one. Number two is you can literally just pay for it. All right. So if you're willing to spend enough money, most people are willing to do it. And then three would just be, sometimes there's apps you can find these individuals on. So for example, there's one that Patrick David Bett has. It's called Minnect, Minnect. And you can go on some of those if you can find them, and some of those people will actually be there. So it was a mixture of the three. But I think also just because I've been able to build something that most of them, when they talk to me, they're like, they actually would make comments like, man, like, why do you want to do something new? It sounds like you're doing pretty good. You're making a lot of money. I was like, yeah, well, I want to do what you're doing. So it's always grass is always greener, right? But a mixture of those three. And I'll also just say, for most people, I don't think it will be worth your time to talk to them until you have a grasp of some of the basic business concepts. Because if you went on those calls and said, how do I start getting customers and stuff? I guess you could, but I think for me, the convos were so advantageous because
for sure,
like right out of the gate, we understand a lot of things about business that need to happen to get it to a certain level. So the convos were more strategic versus tactical.
Yeah.
It was very high level thinking of what type of business, or like how would the fulfillment look, stuff like that, versus like how do I send a message, or what do I say on a sales call, which is to me more tactical.
Yeah. Gotcha. I think that's a good point too, because it is, you kind of get the most out of conversations when you have a bit of a head start on it. On that note, what do you think, if we're talking about, say, someone going from not zero to 10 at startup, but when they get to a point where they're making money online, but they plateau for a fair bit of time? I know I come across a lot of people like that, where they plateau and then they're trying to look for their next move. What advice do you have for people that maybe they hit 10K, 20, 30K, but then sort of flatline for a period of time?
What I see is usually they just need more output of the same stuff. So, it's also what are your expectations? Because I think, I don't know if I heard it from Alex Hormozi first, or I read it somewhere, he regurgitated, I don't really know, but it was something along the lines of, we don't question, the only things we don't question are the things we believe. Right. And then our beliefs become our actions. Yeah. So if you think that your Facebook ads should get a 10x ROI every freaking month, well, guess what? The bottleneck is you're not spending enough money because you think, like, it's like if your Facebook ads are getting more than a 4x, you should spend until it breaks and you get less than a 4x. So I think what I see is a lot of times the expectations of what they think should happen and then their outputs don't match. So for me, I remember my first month where Facebook ads really worked. I was like $5,000. Then I did 10 grand. Then I went to 25. Then I did 50. Then I did 100. Like I was just taking these massive jumps because I knew, hey, I can keep spending and making money until it breaks. Then when it breaks, you can optimize. Someone who's doing 10, 20, 30K a month, there's probably just an issue with the amount of output they're doing, or they're not spending enough money on ads, or they're not spending money on ads at all.
Yeah.
I don't think it's usually any more complicated than that. Even some of my best clients, they come to me and show me their numbers, and I just say, cool, so like, what's the problem? It's like, oh, well, I need more sales. It's like, okay, like, why aren't you spending more money?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, like, I guess I should spend more money. It's like, yeah. So I think a lot of times people overcomplicate it, and it's just doing more of the same thing. That's really all scale is, right? Scale is not complex. Scale is, I take 50 sales calls, now I do 100, now I do 200, now I do 500, now I do 1,000. You're just scaling. You're doing more of the same stuff. You're just doing more of it in a smaller window.
Yeah.
So I think people need to just stop overcomplicating the process. 9 times out of 10, it's like an output issue versus an optimization issue. And when you know it's an optimization issue, typically, is like you need 3 months in a row where you can't get past a certain point. So for me, I remember we were spending, this was for my fitness professional offer.
Yeah.
We spent over $100,000 3 times in a row without an increase in ROI. And that's when I was like, okay, we need to go back and look at our stuff to see what we need to fix to get better ROI on our ads. Because we've done this the last 90 days without any extra profit, right? Like we're making more money. We're not making any more profit.
Yeah.
So
big difference. Yeah.
I just think most people look at the output, and then, also remember with ads, it's easy. You can do the math. So if you're getting an app for $250 and you want to make another 25 grand, just do the math of, okay, this much more, this many apps, this many calls, we'll close this many, etc. Yeah. I just think people are very, I don't know, they get scared, and I'm not really sure why they get so scared, because there's, their business is doing well and then they don't want to do the next steps. Or maybe they're scared of the work, because as you scale, it's more and more work, right? It gets harder.
Yeah, for sure. And fulfillment and everything else. Man, I appreciate that. That's really cool. Just one last thing, man, before I let you go, that I'm curious about. When you get to sort of your levels, what do you look for when you are looking for mentors? Because I know, again, you made a post about investing in yourself. What do you look for in your mentors at this level, when, a lot of the stuff you could just replicate, duplicate, and, sort of keep going?
Yeah, I mean, so I just think it's, you start looking for people who are doing bigger things than you. So I'll like to answer that question better. In terms of internet marketing, I don't really think there's anything else. I'm going to say this is going to sound super egotistical, but I don't think there's much else I can learn in terms of internet marketing, right? So maybe there's a new challenge or a new funnel or a new webinar thing, et cetera, et cetera. Like I'm sure there is, but like, oh my gosh, we did another 2 million this year. That doesn't sound that cool when you're doing 20 or you're doing 25. Like it's just like,
makes
yay.
sense.
It's only 10%. And so for me, I'm starting to look at people who are way bigger, who are doing 50 million or 100 million or 200 million. And they're usually all in different industries. And so I'm just starting to surround myself in groups like that. So one of the groups that you can apply for is called Young Presidents Organization. The minimum to get in is about 10 mil a year.
Yeah.
Super high level group, right? Like, I mean, 10 million a year is like the lowest. You have Entrepreneurs Organization, 2 million a year is the minimum. There's another one I applied for the other day. So there's just a bunch of groups that you can apply to that are actually not only pretty cost effective, but it's just higher level people. And so I'm starting there. But it does get harder, right? Because as you like get higher and higher, there's less and less people who fit the bill.
Yeah.
But I think it's like anything, just being around those individuals and looking at how they think and what they say and the questions they're asking, it changes how you think or how you foresee the world. So that's really been what I've been focused on recently, is trying to join high quality groups where they have higher minimums and take it from there. Other than that, it's been all those calls I've had. But that was like a recurring theme where a lot of them said, hey, join these groups. These are really good groups. You'll get a lot of value.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Because, like I think anyone at any particular level, they can apply that same principle, right? I know that for me, is kind of what I've done. And it's every time I've done it, it's propelled me then to the next thing to look for. So it's interesting to see when, and it's not egotistical, because I expected you to say that there's what else are you going to learn about internet marketing, right? When you've done that money in sales. It's a different level. Yeah,
like even right now, we're like my team's doing this new challenge thing. And yeah, like it's a little different, and like, we got a couple more customers and this and that, but end of the day, it's the same. It's all just another way to get a client. And so I do think, again, there comes, what's easier, like keep putting in 1,000 more % here for another, 10% gain, or take that effort and put it in a vehicle where it just exponentially gets bigger. And that's what I'm seeing at the highest levels. It's not that they're working harder, there's more hours in the day. They're just leveraging their time with better opportunities. And so for me, I think now it's about what's the best opportunity for me to put my time into versus, You know, I could build another 100 internet marketing companies and still die 9 figures or more. But it's like I want to move into something else where I feel like my time is better leveraged, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Well, dude, look, I appreciate your time again, man. I really do. That was awesome. Like, it was a good conversation for me to definitely learn from, and I know a lot of people will appreciate it.